Tag TV and Tag Radio be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions.
So the story goes, Gisborne, an English ranger in India at the time of the British Raj, discovers a young man named Mowgli with extraordinary skills at hunting and tracking. Gisborne learns the reason for Mowgli's almost superhuman talents. He was raised by a pack of wolves in the jungle. A fictional character and the protagonist of Kipling's Jungle Book series, Mowgli becomes Kipling's most prominent and memorable character. Mowgli is considered a major influence on Edgar Rice Burroughs' character Tarzan. You know, wild boy characters forced to come to terms with their humanity and decide whether to rejoin their fellow humans. Well, now there's Mowgli, a gaming company based around a single concept, connecting people through social creation. Greetings, everyone. It's Friday, August 17, 2012, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. Games for real social creation through the encouragement and the enablement of creativity. Mowgli, yes, it's a startup gaming company, but just maybe it's something more, much more. Up to the Tech Talk, faced with his immense creativity and musical talent, successfully living in a reality as a successful attorney, he decides to release his inner boy to create a company and, well, a game that allows players to build and collaborate in a variety of disciplines, including music, illustration, culinary arts, and video. Players are offered the ability to create something they can take outside the virtual and into the ultimate game, reality. Meet Marshall Seese, an experienced entrepreneur with a background in music, technology, and law, former corporate counsel at North Highland Company, partner at Bosnana, Carpenter, Lyons & Seese, attorney at Morris, Manning & Martin, and along the way has launched a multitude of small businesses, is the president of Mars Creation, and has several albums as a highly popular musician and experienced recording artist with an agreement through Backspace Records. Mowgli, first game, Songster, was the first and remains the only music creation social game on Facebook. Marshall describes his musical creativity as if a cocktail. You'd start with an old mason jar, add 2 parts Tom Petty for every 1 part Eric Clapton, throw in a little Cat Stevens, sprinkle some Ryan Adams on top, and oh yeah, Marshall laughs, then you'd have to drink the thing upside down and backwards, because that's just how I play the guitar. Wild Boy and you? Mowgli may just be the way to let it play with the rest of the world in way dreamers and doers have never been able to do before. Its founder and CEO, Marshall Seese, may just have created the ultimate game, innovation as reality.
Marshall, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I think certainly we know about social media, we know about gaming, but tell us a little bit about the overriding concept of social gaming. Tell us a little bit of detail about what that represents.
Sure. So social gaming was really, I wouldn't say pioneered by Zynga, but I might say perfected by Zynga back in around 2007, 2008, as a means to take casual games, meaning it doesn't attract necessarily a hardcore player. You can play for small bits of time at once. There's not necessarily an end goal you're trying to get to. And what happened is in that kind of casual gaming realm, there was a way to interact with your friends through it. So, for example, in Farmville, which is the one that I think most people have probably heard of, you know, you're building your little virtual farm, and then you can go visit your friends' farms, help them out, and kind of interact back and forth to help each other on your creation. And that kind of just took on a life of its own, really, and has given birth to a wide array of games that follow that same model.
Now, obviously, we're very much excited about what you're doing with Mowgli, but how did you get involved in the space? Had you been a gamer? Was it something that you had aspired to do, had been experimenting with? Maybe give us a little bit of background on the evolution of how that can happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love games. If I'm going to go hang out with friends after work, I love going somewhere that's got some kind of fun game to play. I wouldn't necessarily associate myself with somebody who plays a lot of online games, although I have an Xbox and I play that every now and then. But definitely love the concept of it. I love technology. And I just really became fascinated with what was happening in the social gaming industry. I remember a couple of years ago reading a bunch of articles about Zynga and their model, and really honestly got a little bit angry at how much money they were making off of how little value I felt like they were providing to their gamers. And my background is in kind of technology, law, and music, and a very passionate musician. So when I looked at people making these fake farms and fake cities, I thought, man, wouldn't it be so much cooler if they were actually making real music and real songs? So that, those two things kind of coming together gave birth to the idea of Songster.
Well, talk a little bit about now the evolution of that into Mowgli.
Absolutely. So
Mowgli, I'm sorry.
No problem. I founded Mowgli on the concept of connecting people through social creation. So I believe that something very powerful and fulfilling happens when anyone takes the time to create anything, really. It could be music or art. It could be a business. Anytime you're really using your imagination to bring something to life, I think there's something very powerful about doing that. So I wanted to take that kind of core principle and enable people who might not think they have the skills or the talent necessary to do some of those things, like make a song, but make it so accessible and the tool so easy that anyone can do that, and then make it that much more engaging by wrapping game layers around it and enabling people to engage socially through that interaction. So that is kind of the core concept of Mowgli, and then Songster is our first product where we're enabling people to make those songs and those music through the game, and it kind of is our flagship product right now to kind of take that concept to the masses.
So obviously you're an entrepreneur, and your interest is, to a degree, making a profit and building a bottom line. But it sounds to me like you've got something else in what you're trying to accomplish, not only with Songster but with Mowgli. Talk a little bit about beyond building a successful company.
Absolutely. I really believe in this idea of creativity. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and I think if you dig deeper or deep enough with any entrepreneur, you'll find that what they really believe in, what the passion that drives what they do, isn't money. It's something else. Obviously, to sustain a business, you need to have a good way to make money. But for us, when I looked around at how much time people were spending online with these games, and again, with that kind of lack of value and lack of true fulfillment coming from it, it seemed like the right place to really offer a solution that could bring people a level of connection to their friends and the world as a whole, including this big sense of pride and ownership in what they were able to accomplish through the game. And that's a concept that I think transcends music to many other things, and hopefully will be the legs that our company grows on.
Some of the challenge, I think, when you've got individual expression is human desire to want to be approved. I think most creative people, to a degree, have that. A lot of them are independent and don't really need that validation, and yet you have the ultimate paradox that in many cases they're not approved at the time that they're actually they're most productive or most creative, and unfortunately sometimes that either drives them mad or makes them even more successful in terms of productivity. Certainly our history is scattered with that, and I was thinking as you were talking that one of the things that I think is starving artist is a term that you hear a lot. It doesn't necessarily have a brush. It can have a programming software algorithm or something like that, and I guess where I'm drifting into is, what do you see defines creativity in terms of, is it your individual expression and the satisfaction that comes from that, or is it validation? Is it as scary as commercialization? Give us your opinion on that.
No, you've touched on a lot of very interesting points. To me, creativity is really taking your imagination and I'm somebody who, as a songwriter, it's interesting. I don't necessarily feel like when I write a song that it was completely my creation. And I think you'll find this as a very consistent theme with most, the songwriters that you really look up to. And like John Lennon's got a lot of quotes kind of along the side that he heard the song, alluding to the fact that the song already exists in the world. And he just tapped into that source of creativity to find it. And then he was more of like an archaeologist, right? Kind of digging away at the bones and putting together this beautiful dinosaur skeleton. And it takes a skill and an art and a connectivity to that force to be able to do that. But he didn't necessarily say that, that thing was mine. And I think you'll find that, like you were saying, in people who have created some of the most amazing pieces of software, or people who have created the most beautiful works of art. The inspiration comes from somewhere outside of them. And that's one of those things that you talk to any career artist, and they'll be the first to tell you that you can't really control that source of inspiration. But when it hits, and you feel driven to create what has come to you. So
I often describe it as the Close Encounters.
It really is.
I construct my mashed potatoes and listen to the sounds in my head, waiting to get to the mountain. Well, tell us.
It totally is. Well, actually, I want to touch on one point that you said, though, because to me that leads into what you said about people being critiqued. And I think you're right. We often pass judgment on what we like or don't like when it comes to people's creations. And that definitely has a tendency to result in a lot of people not wanting to create. So, I think part of it is building a community in which we can do through the game, where people are more supportive of each other's creations and want to share it with each other and help each other kind of continue to get better. And I think building that base will really help them.
So there's a form of collaboration, I think, that is obviously supportive. That's exactly what collaboration is all about. But the other side of it is in the creative process, when you can get that kind of ideally recognition. And I don't know if recognition is quite the right word, but support, let's say, at a time when you don't necessarily have a muse and the day isn't going necessarily that well, to get you through that and get you past that maybe writer's block or creative block that you're dealing with. Talk a little bit about the lessons that you've learned, though, and it's kind of a same thing, only different, I guess, if to use a cliche, but and that is, here you are dealing in creativity, but you're also dealing in a startup. What have you learned in trying to launch a startup?
Wow, I don't even know where to begin on that one. I don't think I've ever learned so many amazing lessons in such a short period of time since starting Mowgli. There's one, though, that really sticks out in my head that was really a fairly recent revelation, to the point to where it prompted me to write a blog about it, actually. And, I think as an entrepreneur, you'll find that we as a breed tend to be very optimistic and hopeful, which is good, and it's necessary to be able to drive the company forward. But that, for me at least, has led to, thinking that these, what I'll call giant leaps, will happen. And that, kind of magically this massive partner is going to, email us, and the next thing I know, they're putting in a major investment and launching us through the roof. And that there's some, crazy super angel is going to come in and save the day. And you look at these big things that happen, you look at other startup things, you look at OMG Pop selling Draw Something to Zynga, and the media tends to really portray these things as quote-unquote overnight successes. Mm-hmm. But when you really dig into it, you realize that it wasn't a giant leap at all. It was a series of very, very small steps that led up to that. Draw Something is a great point. Most people don't know that it was actually a Facebook game called Draw My Thing for about 8 months prior to ever even launching for the first time on mobile. And even though it obtained 35 million downloads on mobile within 2 months, the far majority of those didn't come until the last 2 weeks of that time frame. So, it's one of those things where they took the time to really perfect the formula and did a lot of testing with users to figure out what the game needed to look like. And then once they had the formula, they launched it on a better platform, and then took some time with marketing, and they kind of finally hit that tipping point to where it launched up. But what looked like this overnight success was really I mean, this is a company, too, mind you, that has probably released 20 to 30 games prior to even releasing Draw Something.
Mm-hmm.
They've been around for years doing it. So, I kind of, in the blog, make the analogy to Neil Armstrong, stepping on the moon. And sure, it looks like a giant leap, right? We just put a man on the moon, but really it's just one small step that took 20 years of NASA. It wasn't Apollo 1, it was Apollo 11. Well, first step one, figure out how to get into the air. You could date that back to the Wright brothers, right? You really look at all the small steps necessary to make some amazing feat like that happen. And it really alters, as an entrepreneur, your perspective on how you address partnerships. You, as a small company, maybe you've gotten into a very large company that could do great things, but you don't want to go in there saying, oh, we're going to do these amazing big things together immediately. You say, okay, there's a lot. This could be a really exciting relationship, but let's start small. What is that one small thing that we could do that would prove a success and lead to the next thing?
At the risk of being presumptuous and thinking I'm an entrepreneur, you really bummed my day, because tomorrow morning I won't look at my emails waiting to download that one that's going to tell me here's $1 million to back my last idea. I would have been waiting.
Ed McMahon could show up at your door.
I check it every day. I check it every day. Okay, now the other side, and unfortunately the good interviews usually run long quick, and we're running out of time, so we need to. I want to, I guess, pose another question, because I love the juxtaposition of dealing with a creative business person, if you can, somewhat of an oxymoron, although I don't think all that much anymore. But now, you've talked about some pretty exciting aspects of Facebook and Zynga, and we all are aware of what's gone on and from a financial standpoint. But what do you think about the public market drop of those two and the effects on companies like yours?
Well, public markets, I think most people know that they tend to be short-sighted in focus, right? And Facebook and Zynga both, have very long-term strategies that I'm sure are going to take a number of kind of short-term dips. I think it's also important to remember, too, that these companies are really kind of reaching a point in their maturity where their rapid growth is tapering off. A lot of the private investors reap the benefits of this massive growth, but that doesn't necessarily, I think they kind of timed it where they went public at a time where they're going to look more like a blue chip stock. Facebook, I think, is going to look a lot more like a utility company. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily something that drives immense loyalty with their user base. It's just something that people feel like they have to do. They have to use it. It is a necessity to connect with a large group of people and understand what's going on in their lives to help make their day-to-day interactions richer. So that doesn't necessarily mean Facebook will always be the champion in that space if somebody else comes up, but I think you'll see more of an acquisition strategy from their perspective, and I think you'll see a lot of easing on their growth rates. So I think it would be a flaw for people to look at startup companies the same way, right? You can't really compare a 13-person social media shop to a multi-thousand-person behemoth who's kind of reaching the peak of their growth.
I think that one of the things that it's kind of ironic, because it kind of falls back to what you were just talking about in terms of the steps that it takes, one large leap, one small step. In many ways, Facebook and Zynga are just that. They're small steps towards something we don't even know will be how we operate socially, literally, figuratively in the future. And in something like education and training, one of the things we talk about often here is it's the same thing, only different, that technology really doesn't know content, and that everything in a way is a form of entertainment, meaning not boring. So a lot of what's going on in the music industry or going on in the film industry or in the gaming business is really happening in healthcare. As naive as that may sound, a lot of the same type of discoveries and collaborations and communication capabilities and best practices and the kinds of things that we've come accepted to literally and figuratively be programmed or conditioned to accept in a gaming environment is quickly going into the traditional market environment.
Yeah, I agree completely with that.
Well, unfortunately, as time goes, I have a feeling that you and I would do probably better over a couple of mojitos than we are over the having an interview. But the other side of it is it's really great to hear such exciting things about what you're doing at Songster and at Mowgli and the things that are happening there. Obviously, I think you're built for innovation, and that literally lays a claim to success at some point or another, be it great wealth, hopefully, but also the kind of satisfaction that I think you're helping other people to find.
Really, Marshall, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us some of the thought leadership and great ideas that you have, and also to share the concept that you're developing.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate the time. I love chatting about it. So I'll take you up on that mojito offer.